Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm your host, Smooth Caramel, and I talk about rap, so that's what I'm gonna do. Do y'all remember that anticipation that you'd feel back in the day when an album was announced and then released? Before the days of streaming when you would have had to have pre-ordered, or if you go back far enough, go to the actual shop and buy physical units. Maybe you'd even cultivated a good relationship with your local record shop owner to the point where they'd put a copy aside for you. Very much a relic of the past now. These days, even when an album's announced, you scarcely feel any real anticipation because the scene is so saturated with little in variety or novelty. I've found in recent years that the most excitement I tend to come across when it comes to finding new music tends to be when I stumble across the Spotify page or YouTube page of a more obscure or old school artist, and then I see some music that I didn't know they'd made. Purely exciting for that momentary discovery because of the lack of knowledge, rather than any sense of anticipation. This is very likely to be the case if you're not one to follow all your favorite entertainers on social media. The best examples for how it's different now versus 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 decades ago would actually be observations that I stumbled across unintentionally. The first was, ironically, a tweet from an OG rapper known as Freddie Fox or Bumpy Knuckles. This read, "Remember when a good collab meant something? Not anymore, they don't mean shit. Even collaborations have been diminished to shit. It's getting down to the wire. Can you spit or do you need names to drop? What the fuck is up?" At the time, I paused to think for a second before retweeting quite emphatically. Collaborations are so commonplace now that it's easy to forget a time when maybe they weren't. Freddie Fox, ironically, had actually known more from features that I'd listened to him on back in the day. But you know what? On those features, his presence felt like a big deal. The songs were designed with a sense of scale and gravity to properly highlight the featured artist or artists and the unique presence and skill that they added to the tracks. My favorite song featuring Freddie Fox being The Militia from Gangstar's Moment of Truth album. Along with Bump Nugs, there was Big Shook featuring. So 3 rappers on a song with 3 verses and a short but hype chorus that explicitly highlights the prominence of the names of the artists that are collaborating on this track that demands this hype. Freddie Fox, I think, being the best for the chorus on this track as their highest energy rapper. So it goes. Big Shook, the late great Guru, and then Mr. Fox himself. Why did I feel the need to outline who was on what part of the song? Because each part fulfills a different role, and the artist tasked with tackling each component does so both effectively for that part of the song and effectively in showcasing their own personal strengths and abilities. Let me break it down. Big Shook opens the song, no real delay. Just comes in once the beat drops after some DJ skills showcased by Primo himself, where he properly exerts his presence on the track. Of the rappers on the lineup, I'd say that Big Shook has the most balanced style, which makes him the most accessible opening. With a song like this that continues to build in intensity, it's good to start the track by bringing some heat, but then also priming the listener for what is to follow. His bars are solid and he utilizes flows that work with the structure of the beat, timing punctuating points to the breaks, for example. A simple but understated technique.
Makers, shared cells with life takers, hats with rum shaker. I make moves so I'm an earthquaker. I've been known to instill fear, although the world may be round, we're still trapped in the square.
I may do a video specifically about flows because people generally seem to know what we're talking about when we discuss flows, but not necessarily have a complete understanding or agreement on what it actually means for flow to be good. But I shall continue. He also manages to name check all the other artists on the track, which works to build anticipation by preparing the listener for the other artist's arrival on the track. This works because of the novelty of such a collaboration, which makes these call-outs not only appropriate, not only deserved, but almost necessary to fully appreciate the breadth of the talents that you get to bear witness to as the listener. More than this though, he quickly and firmly establishes his own presence on the song, which is necessary for one of this ambition. So yeah, overall a great opening to the track. Second verse we have Guru and his characteristically smoky voice and truly laid back delivery, just making it all seem so effortless. This builds his presence on the track further by being so unfazed by a song of this proportion. It juxtaposes the creative precision of his twisting and meandering flows. These are crafted to such an extent that the word choices actually match the tone of where the flows give more or less emphasis. I shall explain.
Take a stand emphatically. Deep strategies leave casualties. I creep gradually till everybody knows that I got more flows than Rosebud.
The multisyllabic internal rhymes require more precision in their delivery, which matches the tone of what's being said with that precision seeming something like strategy, while creeping gradually works as the word creep suggests, by being less decipherable due to its presence in his line being in one of more packed syllables, then more slowly and clearly followed by till everybody knows, matching the clarity of this statement by how much slower and more emphasized it appears and comes across, especially following these more compressed lines. So a great lesson in how to be creative with flows. The more complex style requires more from the listener and makes it more potent, especially in its place, following this initial preparation from Big Shug. And this part asking more of the listener then allows the simplicity of the chorus to shine through, as well as making the verse itself stand out, which is a challenge on its own when you're on the second verse of a 3-verse joint. The human brain suffers from bias when it comes to memory, and other things, but yeah, memory. Namely, recency and early bias. So on a song with 3 verses, each with their own performer, the first and last verses are just instinctively going to be more memorable. This being a fact of bias makes it even more of a feat to have crafted a middle verse that stands out so prominently. With this last chorus before the last verse really sets up that high energy and characterful verse from Nux, which is then allowed to punctuate the entire experience. He even ends the song with the title of the track, which is a device that I particularly love. And what I also enjoy about Nux's verse is that he makes it so clear that he knows exactly what he's doing. And he does it well.
Next will miss a turn. When you speak of who's a dopest MC, I don't come up. But when you speak of who's a loudest MC, I stay one up. What's up? I got stripes. Why you got...
And he does, in a way, act as the life of the track, especially as the chorus and more final, visceral hit of a verse. May have gone into more detail there than I needed to, but I can't help it sometimes and you just get into it. To summarize, the points of this collaboration that made it work to the point of where someone may be excited were production and structure to properly convey the gravity and scale. This is fundamental to creating that overall sense of exceptionalism. No problem at all for a producer of the caliber that is DJ Premier. Each rapper performing specific roles to and beyond a satisfying degree. Each participant also showcasing their own specific skills, combining all that individuality. There's one word which I would consider the most succinct summary of this, which would be distinct. And of course, chemistry, which I've outlined in my rap duo video, but it's also very important for what makes a collaboration, especially one with more contributors, so much of a big deal. This all means that the collaborations sound like their own things. They don't just sound like another song by the main or featured artists, because of what that collaboration brings to the project. Today, I think this has all been largely diminished for what I would say is a few reasons. I checked out the Spotify playlist for Rap Caviar, which I can't even not laugh when I hear because of what I consider the standard of that playlist. But yeah, I listened to a handful of the songs on it and pretty much all of my ideas were immediately reinforced. So we'll begin.
So it begins.
1. Saturation of collabs. The biggest artists in the mainstream overlap so much that there's just little distinction in what they do as individual artists. Each artist's releases don't seem very distinctively different from the artists that they may collaborate with. They, for the most part, share style, production, form, subject matter, and contributors. This is just the Rap Caviar playlist, so it wouldn't need to only include collaborations or have any inclination to do collaborations ahead of individual listings. But I counted 7 out of 40 that had one billed artist. Plus, most of the songs with features were the same featured artists. Drake, Lil Baby, DaBaby, Lil Uzi Vert, who I thought had faded into obscurity, but obviously not. Shows how in touch I'm staying, really. Well, with the mainstream. They accounted for such a high proportion of this list despite having few to no entries where they're listed as the sole or leading artist. The result of this is most of those songs, I mean if we're talking about the Rap Caviar playlist, sounding similar to the point of it being truly uncanny. 2. purpose. The purpose of these collaborations seem a lot more cynically calculated, where features or group projects used to feel more like products of mutual respect, creative compatibility alongside some kind of a corporate intent, cross-marketing and all that. Now it seems to be more something along the lines of a contractual obligation or straight up means for survival. Everyone just trying to stay relevant. Who's the most popular artist at any given time? You can bet they're gonna feature on an album's worth of songs that year. At least. He's getting big. It's time for a Drake feature. I don't know. Maybe it's only time for a hook from The Weeknd.
I see you looking in a strong way, but I won't give it up. Supermodels, they were all fake, cause I never.
I truly wonder if anybody actually turns down features these days, and if they do, what were they even going to be? All these terrible features or just lazy ones, I don't know what kind of a feature would necessitate or warrant being turned down. I remember Ludacris on Grew Up or Screw Up bragging about the tracks that he turned down.
Picking up my sloppy seconds as they reach for the crown. Only reason you own that song is cause I turned that down. I went from Hot Wheels to...
And I can't help but respect that line even more these days. It's created what I would call a shared and concentrated market share. There's a far more limited demand for artists within their individual capacity, and as such, few artists actually carve out any individual appeal or follow. And if they do, it tends to be just less significant. These collaborations end up feeling like cross-promotion more than anything else. And these main drops do start to feel like they're more about sharing clout and relevance rather than hyping each other up or celebrating the feat of the collaboration. When I see an album with one artist's name on it, I expect to hear their music, their style, their sound, their personal brand and style of music. A lot of the time, it just ends up feeling like the shared or collective style or brand of the mainstream at any given point in life or time. It very much encapsulates that moment in the rap mainstream and nothing more, I would say. The amount that I mistake songs for other songs or artists for other artists is quite telling of that for me. The who's your favorite rapper debate is arguably a good reflection of this for me. I don't think I've had a really passionate exchange about favorite rappers and whatnot since I was in maybe high school. It just seems a bit irrelevant now. I'd say that it seems that you pick either one of the collective range of acceptable names, or you would have a choice that is more obscure and thus unknown, and the conversation effectively ends there. I gush about my favorite rappers. I mean, it's also why I started this channel, because I wanted to, but I've not come across anybody that was willing to gush about their favorite rappers from the mainstream right now, or further, had that need to. It's not been like uncontained word vomiting about the love that they feel for any particular rapper that's out right now. And with this newfound saturation and normalization of lots of different collaborations and features comes the issue of removing anticipation. There's no time to get to know and then subsequently enjoy a rapper on their own and in their individual capacity. You don't often see a very long window of time where they begin to carve out their individual appeal, style, brand, and flavor. There's no signature. They're essentially not given enough opportunity to even cultivate this because they tend to be lunged into the scene of collaboration and features as soon as any relevance is established. It seems that they often are just abruptly a part of a litany of songs, a part of just this common roster. I remember when you would discuss, wonder, and hope when it came to these collaborations or potential collaborations. You'd speculate about what two of your favorite rappers might sound like together because of their seemingly compatible styles or sounds, or maybe just their similar standings in the industry. And you wouldn't know if it was ever gonna happen. And when it did happen, you got to revel in it. Alright, so I'm gonna leave the discussion here for this video, so consider it a part one. I'm gonna look at a different part of why rap seems less exciting now, and I'll be using that as a bit of an excuse to look into other parts of rap that I used to or do find exciting when they happen. So stay tuned if you want to check that out. I would appreciate the views. So yeah, part 2 in a couple weeks. No more obscure this week because it's a two-parter, so I think I'll save that for the subsequent video to do a bit more of a collective one. Alright, so peace, love, all that good shit. Otherwise, this has been a Smooth Camera production.